Most people believe being kind, patient, and understanding guarantees a happy ending. But in real life, the good girl often loses in love, in work, and in social hierarchies. Agreeableness is not just a personality label. It is a quantifiable trait measured by psychologists with high accuracy. On the NEOPIR, agreeableness scores reach an internal consistency of alpha equals 0.88. This reliability allows researchers to track how agreeableness shapes real-world outcomes, especially for women. Dr. Samuel Gosling, a leading authority on the Big Five, describes agreeableness as the tendency to prioritize harmony, avoid conflict, and meet others' needs, even at personal cost. But when kindness becomes default, the price is measured in dollars and lost authority. Meta-analyses of over 12,000 workers show a consistent negative link between agreeableness and earnings. For women, each standard deviation rise in agreeableness predicts a 5 to 10% drop in annual income, independent of education or experience. This penalty is not theoretical. In a controlled study, women scoring high on agreeableness accepted 12% fewer counteroffers and started their careers with lower salary asks. The effect is amplified in competitive fields where assertiveness is currency and compliance is quietly devalued. Maya, a junior attorney, is a case in point. Her agreeableness score sits at 4.8 out of 5, well above the team average of 3.2. She receives glowing peer reviews, but her starting offer was 5% lower than her less agreeable colleague. When asked to negotiate, Maya hesitated, worried about seeming difficult. The gap widened. Over time, this pattern compounds: missed raises, stalled promotions, and a growing perception of being likable but not influential. The mechanism runs deeper than negotiation. Experimental vignettes show that candidates described as highly agreeable are rated 12% lower in competence by evaluators, even when qualifications are identical. The message is clear. In environments where power and resources are limited, being safe and agreeable signals low dominance. Respect and higher pay flow not to the most accommodating, but to those who can set boundaries and advocate for themselves. The financial loss is only the first cost. The next is invisible: how habits of compliance take root. Maya's story begins long before her first job offer. By adolescence, the pattern is already set. In a 2018 study by Lannon and Kramer, compliance rates among girls climb sharply between ages 12 and 15, rising from 38 to 62% when adults offer praise for being helpful. The lesson is simple. Saying yes brings approval. Each small reward for being easygoing, each nod from a teacher or parent, trains the reflex to agree, even when the cost is invisible. Dr. Cordelia Fine, a leading researcher on gendered socialization, describes how these early scripts embed themselves. The good girl learns to anticipate what others need before they ask, to volunteer first, and to avoid the risk of confrontation. By the time she enters the workforce, the habit is automatic. Audit data show that highly agreeable women take on 23% more unpaid or low-status tasks than their peers. These are not just extra projects. They are the hidden hours spent smoothing conflicts, mentoring colleagues, and volunteering for committees that rarely lead to promotion. Maya's calendar fills with requests. Can you cover this call? Can you train the new hire? Can you stay late for the team? She says yes, fearing that a refusal will be seen as selfish or unkind. Over time, the workload gap grows. The same studies that track compliance show a 31% higher rate of emotional labor among agreeable women, a burden that is rarely acknowledged or rewarded. What begins as kindness becomes a liability, quietly marking out who is available for exploitation. The boundary problem is not just about lost time. It is about becoming visible to those who look for easy targets, the ones who never say no. Charm, in the wrong hands, is a weapon. Dr. W. Keith Campbell, who has spent decades studying narcissism, describes how individuals high in narcissistic traits scan for people who make their lives easier, those who rarely push back, who absorb discomfort, who say yes out of habit. In organizational settings, Dr. Adam Grant's research shows that gratitude, when used strategically, becomes a lever for extraction of more unpaid effort. Thank you messages, framed as appreciation, translate into a 23% rise in voluntary overtime and a measurable increase in emotional labor. For highly agreeable women, this is not just a matter of working harder. It's a pipeline from praise to exploitation. Maya's inbox fills with requests that sound like compliments. "You're so reliable. Could you take this on?" Each acceptance adds another invisible task. Audit studies find that women like Maya are assigned 12% more unpaid or low-status work than their peers. These are not random assignments. They are targeted. In environments where predators operate, the agreeable are twice as likely to be singled out for extra duties. The targeting rate is 2.4 times higher for those who rarely refuse compared to those who set clear boundaries. The emotional toll is harder to measure, but no less real. Deep acting, the effort spent masking frustration, maintaining a pleasant front, rises by 31% among highly agreeable women. This is not just about being nice. It is about being seen as available for emotional labor, the person who will smooth over every conflict and absorb every slight. The predator's strategy is simple. Find the person who won't say no and outsource discomfort. The result is a slow drain, energy, time, and self-respect, quietly siphoned away under the cover of gratitude and charm. Maya's exhaustion is not an accident. It is the outcome of a system that rewards compliance and punishes resistance, where kindness without boundaries is an open invitation to be used. Fairy tales and cultural myths do not simply entertain. They write the rules of who wins and who waits. Four motifs recur across centuries: the silent sufferer who is rescued, the patient helper who is rewarded, the self-sacrificing girl who is chosen, and the obedient daughter whose virtue is her only weapon. These stories glorify patience, invisibility, and compliance, traits that, in the real world, carry a cost. Dr. Sally Hines, a leading sociologist, points out that these archetypes are not relics of the past. They shape expectations in classrooms, boardrooms, and homes, teaching girls that their value lies in being agreeable and undemanding. The numbers reveal what the stories conceal. Only 21% of C-suite positions are held by women, and those who reach the top are less likely to score high in agreeableness. In fact, women who display assertiveness face a 9% extra penalty in perceived likability. But those who remain passive are overlooked for leadership altogether. The leadership gap is not a mystery. It is the predictable result of rewarding patience over visibility and compliance over initiative. Fairy tale logic promises that goodness will be noticed and rewarded, but the data say otherwise. In competitive systems, the virtues of silence and self-sacrifice are liabilities. The patient helper is passed over for promotion. The silent sufferer is assigned more work. Modern workplaces and social hierarchies do not operate by the logic of happy endings. Instead, they reward those who step forward, not those who wait to be chosen. The cultural script that glorifies passive virtue quietly trains women to trade power for approval, making compliance look like safety while stripping away real choice. Dr. Hines calls it the fairy tale illusion, a story that comforts but does not protect. Maya sits across from her manager, a script in hand. Instead of apologizing or hedging, she tries something new, the broken record technique. She repeats her boundary, calmly and without explanation. "I'm unable to take on extra work this week." The request is pressed again, and she repeats herself, word for word. This time, the conversation ends with a simple acknowledgement. No argument, no escalation. The broken record method, tested in assertiveness workshops, produces a 45% drop in repeated requests, according to randomized trials. The effect is not just anecdotal. Participants show a 0.34 standard deviation increase in perceived competence, measured before and after training. Dr. Linda Ridgway, a behavioral psychologist specializing in workplace dynamics, describes assertiveness as the art of setting limits without hostility. Her research tracks women through a 6-month coaching program where the only intervention is practicing anchor statements. "That won't work for me. I need more information before I decide. I'll get back to you tomorrow." These phrases, delivered without apology or justification, raise average salary outcomes by 7% and increase promotion rates by 12% within a year. The data show that clarity, not compliance, drives respect. Assertiveness is not aggression. It is the refusal to trade power for approval. Choice is the lever. In controlled studies, women who are trained to state preferences and consequences, "If this workload is not adjusted, I will need to reprioritize my projects," are rated as more competent and are less likely to be targeted for emotional labor. The link is direct. Those who set boundaries early are seen as high-agency individuals. Power comes from choice, not from being liked. Respect follows clarity, not compliance. Kindness without boundaries invites exploitation. The evidence is unambiguous. Assertiveness, practiced as a skill and anchored by data, transforms how others respond. The problem is not kindness. The problem is believing that kindness alone creates safety. This system rewards those who draw lines, not just those who please. Today, research shows that agreeable women still earn less and shoulder more unseen labor. The problem is not kindness. The problem is believing that kindness alone creates safety. In power games, clarity outlasts compliance. Your boundaries are your leverage.